7:58 a.m. on this bank. Are we calling it a bank holiday Tuesday morning? Let's call it a bank holiday Tuesday morning. And it's a very good Tuesday morning for the BBC Leeds journalist and football reporter as well, Adam Pope. Adam, very good morning to you.
Good morning, guys.
You must not have come down. I was listening to yourselves on the podcast this morning on my drive into work, and the three of you were absolutely buzzing, and rightly so. What a performance.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, that's the Don't Go to Bed Just Yet podcast with Simon Ricks of the Kaiser Chiefs. I mean, look, two of us on the podcast were very fortunate to be there at Anfield covering the game, and let's face it, guys, everybody expected Leeds to go to Anfield on Saturday night and probably take a bit of a beating, and that's just the way of things at the moment, the way it's gone with Jesse Marsch for a little while, 8 games without a win, and then they go and put in a performance like that. And you have to say, despite the keeper making 9 saves, they deserve to win the game. And they took it to Liverpool where they could and got their breaks and won it. And it was an extraordinary night, and one that you've got to make the most of, because they just don't come around much, do they?
They don't. And like, you look at someone like Crysencio Summerville, celebrating turning 21, I guess, with that winner as well. What a moment. And I guess the hope now, he's got some criticism. He hasn't been the finished article just yet, but I mean, I guess the hope now is that this isn't a Federico Macheda for Man United against Villa moment where he scores the famous goal and then kind of fades into the darkness. But it could be the start of something special for him if he can keep doing things like that.
That's a really decent comparison that you made there to Macheda. Yeah, remember that extraordinary goal he scored, didn't he, on his debut? The thing with Summerville, he's been on the scene at Leeds for a little while now. Yeah, he turned 21 within a few hours of scoring that goal, as you say. But he arrived back in 2020 and, came from Feyenoord. He'd been through the youth system there. He went on loan to Den Haag, and then, he's been in the Dutch international youth system as well. He's absolutely shone in what we now call the 21s. Because Leeds got relegated from the top division of that, having been promoted to it just 2 seasons ago. So he's now playing in a sort of lower division of that and is way, way too good for it. He was too good for it last year when they were in the higher division against the better academies, of Chelsea and Liverpool and everybody else. The thing is, could he do it at senior level? And we haven't seen too much to suggest that he could cope with it. He's missed a couple of chances lately, particularly against Arsenal, one against Leicester. He's been given his head, if you like, by the manager, by the head coach, Jesse Marsch, because he's been telling us, not least for putting the number 10 on his back, that that this guy's the next one off the rank as far as they're concerned. They want to give him a go. They want to give him minutes. And you have to say, having had a decent game against Liverpool, he's crowned it off with a really, really good goal and a memory that will live forever. So maybe that's the big turning point for him. But you have to think, if Luis Sinisterra was fit, guys, would he have started the game? Yes, he would have. And then maybe Crysencio would have been coming off the bench. Big question now is, does he deserve to keep his place for the game against Bournemouth at the weekend?
Did you buy into what Marsch was saying, Adam, that Leeds were genuinely a good bit better than what the results would suggest over the last sort of 7 or 8 games? Because it did seem that way, but I guess you can only get away with that, so you can't get away with that every week. And if Liverpool had hockeyed them as you say, people would have suggested that was likely to happen. How is Jesse Marsch feeling this morning, and how much pressure would have been on him?
Yeah, I think if they had a terrible performance and a heavy result, and don't forget they lost their 6th under Bielsa last year, then I think it would have been very hard for the board to have kept supporting him for these next few games. He's been speaking like a man who feels that he's going to be in charge, certainly to the World Cup. This was prior to the Liverpool game. So there's no doubt that the board have been trying to give him every bit of weaponry, every tool to make sure that he can make this a success. And that's included bringing in psychologists, extra staff at the moment, what have you. They don't want to row back on a big decision to have got rid of Bielsa and brought Jesse Marsch in. So they're going to try and make it work. And thankfully for Jesse, it went the right way for him. But there's no doubt if, for example, they went to beat Bournemouth at the weekend, then the knives would be out again, to be quite honest, because it got so toxic ahead of the Liverpool game in terms of the performance away at Leicester, where the fans turned on the head coach. And then against Fulham, where they turned on the head coach, but particularly on the board as well. It just shows you that within the space of one performance and a couple of results, that it can get really nasty. So, I mean, I've got to be honest. When they were losing to Fulham with 7 minutes to go, 3-1, you wondered if that was 7 minutes left of his career. This would be amazing if he could turn this around, to get the crowd back inside, for the crowd to sort of, not berate the board anymore for not making the signings they should have done, and to turn this around and make it, a relatively successful season would be some going. And it would have shown some nerve as well by the board and by him as well in what he's doing.
Yeah, but so what's the transformation been like? Because it must almost be like a change in your complete political system in a country to go from Bielsa to anything really.
It's interesting. Look, this was sold as a sort of evolution and a progression, wasn't it, from the Bielsa days. It's been really hard trying to see. Look, firstly, in those first 12 games, when Jesse came in ahead of schedule, Bielsa was going to go in the summer. We knew that there was going to be a part in the ways. He had to sort of play scramble football, so it was difficult to sort of assess what style was being implemented, because it did change quite a bit over the next sort of 12 games or so, and thankfully he managed to keep them up. Now we're seeing his players come in, and this, if you want to call it a Red Bull style, it's a lot more narrow, it's a lot more focused into the penalty spot. A bit like Bielsa in some ways, they try and regain possession very, very quickly and pressurise teams. That's very similar. But the transition, nobody saw an improvement in terms of the way they played. It wasn't as exciting, it wasn't as attractive. And largely under Bielsa, despite there being in every season a long sort of spell where they weren't winning games and it all looked like it was going to fall apart, everybody sort of believed in it because he had that body of evidence behind him that mostly this worked, mostly it led to wins, and mostly certainly led to attractive football, but it did lead to some severe beatings as well. Fans were divided as to whether they wanted to sort of risk that and keep that going to the end of the season, and they could go out having kept them in the division and gone out in a blaze of glory, if you like, or they've tolerated them taking them down. They probably would have done because it was Bielsa. Jesse doesn't have that credit in the bank with the fans, I don't think, because he hasn't got the body of evidence behind him. So it's much harder for him. Plus, there's been, let's face it, there's been from different quarters a lot of sort of anti-Americanism as well towards him too. So it's been a really tough environment to work in, but maybe he's just starting to come through the other side.
I was going to ask you about Patrick Bamford actually, but can I call you on that? Because whether we like it or not, coming from this part of the world, there is an unconscious kind of skepticism when anyone with an American accent speaks about football, and that's just how it is.
It is, and look, I sort of try to make this comparison that it's like a xenophobic thing almost. Bielsa got it, when you remember the Spygate issue where the Football League basically created a retrospective law to punish him for something that wasn't illegal when he was spying, or sent someone to watch training at Derby, an open training session. I felt that a lot, and it's not just from fans, this comes from authorities as well. There was a lot directed towards him, being, this is what you get from people from South America. I thought it was really xenophobic and bordering on racist at times. And I think Jesse suffered a bit of that, even before he came. Some people will not tolerate having an American coach, and that's wrong, because he has got some success behind him in MLS and obviously in Europe. Yeah, he's had his down times too. So you've got to give the guy a chance. The fact he kept in the division meant he deserved his shot at it this time around. But there's still those that really aren't taken to it, and those, I have to say, guys, that would have been, not saying happy, but we're sort of wanting a bit of a heavy defeat the weekend to see if that would push the board over the edge to get rid of him. Obviously, that's not a prevailing view because people don't want to see their side lose, but there certainly is that sort of antipathy towards him and what's going on at the moment. Obviously, the performance and the result against Liverpool has eased the pressure, and maybe it's going to give him enough leeway to convert a few of those sort of back on side, if you like. But there is a body that just won't ever have it, and that's, you're never going to change those people, are you guys? It could be any other coach, other than the one that they want. If they're not happy with him, they don't like the sound of him, then they're never going to be happy with him. Probably a bit like the Benitez issue at Liverpool for different reasons. When he went to Everton, there were those that were never going to have him, even though he was a really good coach, and it turned out horribly for him there. And hopefully it'll turn out better for Jesse in terms of his Leeds career.
Johnny's brought him up there already, Adam, but Patrick Bamford, you'd have to be concerned, and look, it's a conversation that comes up every week, I'm sure, among Leeds fans as to where the Patrick Bamford of old is. But even, I know you described the goal, I think, as the rusty toe poke goal for Summerville, but just leading up to the goal was a fairly rusty touch from Patrick Bamford, albeit it led to the goal, but surely he didn't mean it. What's your take on Bamford at the minute, and is it a concern going forward? Like, is his place in the team threatened at all?
It is a concern, guys, because he's been out with a series of injuries for the best part of the year. He hasn't scored since December last year. And now he's getting into the positions now that he's, if you like, fit or certainly fit to do sort of 90 minutes or near enough. He's getting into the positions, but his confidence is gone and his touch quite clearly is gone. He also missed a great chance just prior to the sort of inadvertent setup for Summerville. So that is a massive concern. You know, he's been stuck on 99 career league goals for, you know, the best part of, 11 months now. But he has had a lot of injuries. So do you keep playing him and say that he plays back into form and eventually something will go in? You're sort of in that scenario, but that's tough. It'd be easy if there was another striker, guys. Rodrigo has got 6 goals, but he hasn't particularly played very well. So it's chopping and changing who plays at 9 for Leeds at the moment. The big thing, and I'm sure you've discussed this as well, is that why haven't they gone and got or successfully managed to land another striker that can get you 15 to 20 goals. And that has to happen in January because clearly they can't rely on Patrick just at the moment. I think it'll come good for him. I'm quite optimistic. I do think it'll come back round for him, but it's very, very difficult. And also the clamour to play Joe Gelhardt off the bench, that's been pretty rife to see. Well, give him a go. They have done it this season. They did it at Brentford. It didn't turn out very well, not particularly because of Joe's performance, but because of a defensive collapse that saw them beaten 5-2. He's a real talent. He's a goal scorer, but again, I don't think at 20 he's going to get you 15 or 20 goals in a full season just yet. So they do need that striker in there. But there are signs that others are starting to sort of chip in a little bit. You've got obviously Summerville coming in. Jack Harrison will always get a few for you too. Sinisterra, providing he stays fit, he's going to score a few goals. So the goals are starting to come from elsewhere. Could just do with a few more. Brendan Aronson looks like he can threaten too. But in terms of that number 9 and the people that can convert the chances that they are creating, seriously, they are lacking. They need more competition up there, and that's going to be a 30 million, 40 million pound signing, isn't it? You would have thought, and they've missed out on De Ketelaere already, and Gakpo so far. And those sort of players, their prices are going to be even more if they were to go back in for them. And one of them's already gone anyway, De Ketelaere to Italy.
As you mentioned, Adam, like the 2 big games in the league coming up this side of the World Cup, you've got Bournemouth, as you said, this weekend at home, and then you have Tottenham away. Like we were just chatting, myself and Johnny, on the show on Saturday about the Premier League sack race and the odds. This was, of course, before the game on Saturday evening, and Jesse Marsch was the hot favourite, 8-15, odds on to be the next manager sacked. And I'm just looking at the odds this morning. He's gone from 8-15 to 10-3. He's now the second favourite. So Ralph Hasenhüttl has replaced him as the 9-4 favourite to be sacked. Funny enough, Jurgen Klopp has shot up the rankings to number 3. But I mean,
this is the mad thing. Like, is Klopp under more pressure than Marsch now after a game? One game, like, you know.
That's the point as well, Adam. Is that, and you guys made it the podcast. The fact that after the match at the full-time whistle, and you would have seen it at the ground, the Leeds players have bought into this because they're running over to Jesse Marsch. There's hugs all around, there's smiles all around. So, if nothing else, the players have bought into him.
Yeah, you can't say he's lost the dressing room. You can't. He's we've spoken to a lot of players. Obviously, publicly, they are going to say they're right behind it. But you can sort of, when you've been around it, like you know, guys, you speak to managers, you speak to players all the time, on or off the record, and you get a feeling whether they're meaning it. And generally, you don't find anybody sort of dissenting, or that there's any sort of little divisions in the pack, if you like, that people are doing their best to get behind this. The problem is if it continues in terms of a losing streak, that's really hard for them to keep doing that and believing in it. However, I think you're right. The body language, the hug from Mark Rocker in particular, and I think Christensen came over as well. Yeah, it was a proper sort of, we've done it, we've believed in it, we've gone and come into a really difficult game, and this system has seen us through. I think what I would say on the other side of that, I don't know if you saw the game, the way Leeds play, though, it must be quite hard to believe in a system that allows quality, wide players like Robertson, like Trent Alexander-Arnold to have a lot of the ball in wide areas so they can deliver almost at will. To have that confidence to, if you like, pack out your defence and make sure you don't make a mistake against the likes of, Salah or whatever in those wide areas it's a real test of faith. And it's scary at times, but it came off at the weekend. When it works, it works. If they can do it for 90 minutes and maintain the energy, then great. But it's a quite scary way of watching football at times against some of the, particularly against sort of the top 6 sides. But so far he's managed to sort of, let's say struggle through this. I tried to compare it. I think the other way I said this in the podcast as well. Like I just felt like Leeds as a club were like trying to pass a kidney stone last week, and either it comes out naturally and you carry on, or you have to remove it with surgery. And they were at that point last week, I really felt, and let's face it might still be that case at the moment, but could it be, much as we felt the Chelsea victory, could this was a bit of a defining moment for Jesse Marsch? Could this be a real turning point in this season and for him and how people look at him if he can back it up on Saturday?
Clock's going back 1st November, kidney stones.
Yeah, exactly.
Don't happen.
It's all linked. Absolutely not. That's the one, I suppose, Adam. A lot of Irish Leeds fans tuning in this Saturday to see if it can be followed up on. Great stuff, Adam, as always. Thanks a million this morning.
Oh, pleasure. Nice to speak to you guys.
Great stuff. Adam Pope there, of course, from the BBC. Covers Leeds very, very closely. Great win for them at the weekend at Anfield.